build on the pipeline safety advances we have been making. It was the Railroads, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials Subcommittee Chairman back in 2001 when I was the subcommittee chairman when we last authorized the PHMSA's pipeline safety program. That bipartisan act included 42 specific directives for PHMSA to carry out to improve pipeline safety, half of which PHMSA has completed. PHMSA needs to finish out those provisions, and so I'm pleased that Chairman Denham's bill includes strong transparency and reporting requirements to keep the pressure on PHMSA to finish the 2011 work. Another major provision in this act is providing PHMSA with emergency order authority for pipelines. Most DOT modal administrations have EO authority, which will allow regulators to act quickly when they identify an industry-wide safety issue. That constitutes an imminent hazard to the future, to the public. However, other modes like FRA or the HAZMAT program have used EO authority very sparingly, and my expectation is Pipeline Safety Program will also use it rarely. As we've developed this language, we took great care to tailor it to the unique aspects of the pipeline system, which is an interconnected network that supplies vital energy products to homeowners and major businesses. So at the front end, we include language that requires PHMSA to consult with the industry stakeholders and other federal and state regulators prior to issuing an EO, so that PHMSA understands the potential impact on the economy, the end users, and safety. We also include extensive due process procedures on the back end so that the agency makes a wrong call, affected parties have redress both administratively and judicially. Specifically, we require PHMSA to issue regulations to carry out this authority, including requiring administrative law judge procedures that mirror similar requirements in the HAZMAT EO authority. I believe this is a good bill. It builds on the work we've accomplished in the 2011 Act. I look forward to working with the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Senate on getting a new Pipeline Reauthorization Act this year. I want to thank Chairman Denham, Ranking Member Capuano, and Ranking Member DeFazio for their cooperation and leadership on this bill. And I now recognize Subcommittee Chairman Denham to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to also thank Mr. DeFazio, Mr. Capuano for working with us to get this bill done. This is the Protecting Our Infrastructure of Pipelines and Enhancing Safety Act of 2016. The Pipes Act of 2016 will help to make sure that the United States, which has the largest network of energy pipelines in the world, is also the safest in the world. Pipelines are a critical part of our energy framework, transporting 64% of the energy commodities within the country. In order to ensure that pipelines remain the most cost-effective and safest means to transport energy products, oversight of DOT's pipeline safety programs is imperative. Throughout this Congress, the subcommittees worked in a bipartisan manner to develop this legislation. We've held a number of hearings, roundtables, and listening sessions to hear from PHMSA, safety advocates, and other stakeholders on the need for authorization. First, we make sure PHMSA is focused on finishing out the 2011 provisions by requiring PHMSA to update Congress every 60 days on their progress. In the 2011 law, there were 42 congressional directives, of which only 26 are complete. This reauthorization improves safety in many ways, one of which is by setting minimum federal standards for underground natural gas storage facilities. The bill also authorizes emergency order authority for the pipeline sector, but with important language that ensures PHMSA will assess the potential economic, end user, and national security impacts before acting. Following our subcommittee's roundtable last year on technological developments, this legislation promotes better use of data and technology to improve safety. GAO is required to study the latest innovations in pipeline materials and corrosion prevention. Improving third-party damage prevention, a leading cause of releases, is also an important goal. This bill includes a study on developing new technology to improve this area. To ensure an information sharing system is used to improve safety outcomes, this bill creates a working group comprised of PHMSA, states, industry stakeholders, and safety groups to develop such a system in a balanced manner. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure we have the safest pipeline network possible. We've worked in a bipartisan manner with our Democrat counterparts to come to a mutual agreement on a bill that improves pipeline safety. I believe that this bill will succeed in improving the safety of our pipeline infrastructure. And again, I want to thank Chairman Schuster, Mr. DeFazio, and Mr. Capuano in working with us on an important piece of legislation.
I thank the gentleman and now recognize Mr. DeFazio for a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just join the chorus here. This is a good work product. It is a bipartisan bill. I think it's superior to either the House Energy and Commerce bill or the Senate bill with a number of the provisions that we've included on a bipartisan basis. Emergency order authority for PHMSA is critical. They have the authority for hazmat, but not for pipelines. Right now, they can only issue a corrective action order targeted toward a particular incident. And, there's an example where a number of years ago, PHMSA identified defective pipeline from China, but it had no authority to require the industry on a widespread basis to address the defects. They can only issue voluntary guidance requesting the industry take action. I think there's two lessons there. Don't buy pipeline from China. And we are now going to be able to act when they send defective product here. There's been some concern raised that this would be a backdoor way for rulemaking. The specific language we included in the bill would absolutely preclude that. I'm confident this would be rarely used, but it would be used in the interests of public safety. In terms of the backlog at PHMSA, we have a relatively recent change in leadership, and I feel that the new leadership is taking that agency in a much better direction than it has embarked upon in the past. And the bill here is going to focus in on provisions of the last reauthorization that 5 years ago, and we've only got 2 NPRMs to show for it, a national notice of proposed rulemaking. I'm just so tired of the bureaucratic process around rulemaking. It's just so laborious, and then of course, then when OMB gets involved, it's even worse. So, we are going to have transparency on those issues, and hopefully accomplish the goals that Congress set them on 5 years ago. It would be, we've had issues where in responding to major spills, particularly the Enbridge spill, that the first responders, emergency responders did not have proper knowledge of what that spill was. And now within 6 hours, they're going to have to provide MSDS sheets to tell people what they are dealing with. It does allow PHMSA to implement safety standards for underground natural gas storage. Most notably the problems in California. Oregon has 7 facilities, and the states will be allowed to exceed the federal baseline, but having a federal baseline, I think, is important. It does increase grants to states to help them carry out their intrastate duties. All in all, I think this is a good piece of work, and I highly recommend it to my colleagues.
I thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Capuano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to, again, join the chorus, as my leader said. I'm getting a little tired of having a working committee this size that actually does something. I think we really need to join the rest of Congress and yell at each other and scream at each other and get nothing accomplished. And I know that that's not what people expect, but this is exactly the way it's supposed to work. We have a very good product here. Neither side is perfectly happy, but that's exactly the way democracy works. We're making America better with this bill. I'm looking forward to voting for it. I want to publicly thank both yourself, Mr. Schuster, and Mr. Denham on the other side. You have been, I don't want to get you in trouble, but I've actually enjoyed working with both of you, so I don't want, if you have to explain that to anybody, I guess that's too bad. I apologize. And, of course, Mr. DeFazio on my side has always been a pleasure to work with and to know. I also want to take a minute to thank PHMSA. We've worked with them on this bill. For me, this is some new area. I'm not an expert on pipelines or hazardous material. They've been very helpful in educating me and enlightening me, and I will tell you that under the new leadership, they have become much more open and responsive. And I also want to thank the staff. As a former staff member myself, I tell you that they do most of the work. We kind of just take the accolades, and I particularly want to thank on our side Jennifer Esposito-Hamendi, who has been my guiding light and my kind of rock to rely on, and on the other side Fred Miller. I know that neither one of you work alone. That we are surrounded by great staffs, but without your cooperation, we'd be at each other's throats. And it's so much easier when we get along differences beside, we get along, and when the staff can work professionally and cooperatively, and I think it's important to point that out. Mr. Chairman, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to voting for now the second positive piece of legislation to come out of this committee this year, out of this subcommittee this year, and I look forward to moving it to the floor.
I thank the gentleman. If it would make you feel more at ease, I come from a big family, so I'll take you out back and we can yell and scream at each other. I just don't want to do it in public. That's what I'm used to doing at home with my brothers and sisters. So, and I figured you're from Boston, so you're used to mixing it up too.
We usually use weapons. But that's
Baseball bat.
Thank you, Mr. Capuano. Any other members wish to be heard or have a statement? Ms. Miller from Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments on this bill, and which I'm going to be very happy to support, but and there's a couple of items that have been included in here at my behest, and I'm appreciative of that. I just want to speak a little bit about pipeline safety and what it means to my state and my region, quite frankly. And, you know, as a nation, we always think about our energy sources and other places that it comes from. Quite frankly, Canada is not only my state of Michigan's largest energy provider, they're the largest energy provider for the United States of America. And when you think about the mitten of Michigan, we have these pipelines coming from Canada that are transiting energy, which we want and which we need. But obviously it needs to be done in a very safe manner. And in the state of Michigan right now, we have a lot of concern, both Democrats and Republicans. In fact, I was listening to our senior senator this morning on the radio, a Democrat, talking about this very issue. This is a really bipartisan area of concern, because when you think about the Great Lakes, it is literally over 20% of the freshwater drinking supply of the entire planet. Of course, there's more fresh water under the Arctics, but you can't get at it. And so, and there's all kinds of currents and the lake levels and winds. Because of all these things, you can imagine if we were to have any kind of exposure or spill or whatever, how catastrophic that could be. I mean, unbelievable. There's a pipeline called Line 5 that goes under the Straits of Mackinac between Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. It's transiting 540,000 barrels of crude oil and natural gas every day. And this was something that was constructed in 1953. There's a tremendous amount of consternation about its safety right now. The University of Michigan just in the last 2 weeks have put out a report that showed that if there was any kind of a leak, over 700 miles of the Great Lakes could be impacted. So I raise this as one because of the Great Lakes. And, you know, we had the largest onshore oil spill in the United States history from the same company that has the Line 5. This is what they call Line 6B. That was back in 2010 in the Kalamazoo River in southwest Michigan. And at that time, this Line 6B also goes into my district from Canada under what they call the St. Clair River. I know you can't all see the mitten here, but running from Canada into Michigan. Again, we want the energy. Canadians are our greatest ally, our best friends. We want the energy, but it's got to be done safely. That particular Line 6B, they had showed with their televising with the pig in that there was an anomaly in the line. And so they reduced the amount of product that was transiting there by about half and said that would be their solution, which was not the correct answer, quite frankly. And this committee had a hearing on that. Long story short, they did the right thing. They actually built 3,600 foot of new pipeline. And, of course, they just let the old one atrophy. But we all feel very good about that. The company responded. The industry responded. We want the energy, but it's got to be done in a safe way. Just within the last month, and this will be just one thing I'll say about this as well, again, in a bipartisan way, there was a public comment period that almost nobody knew about a couple of old lines that run again under the St. Clair River. Myself and Representative Debbie Dingell sent a letter to John Kerry, to the Department of State, saying nobody knew about this public comment period. Could you extend the public comment period, which they did for a month. And during that time, they got almost 700 comments from people that are concerned about these lines. So I just say, and I think the work that has been done in a bipartisan way on this piece of legislation is very important. I think it advantages us from an energy supply standpoint and a safety supply standpoint, but obviously a principal advocacy for anybody who comes from the Great Lakes region, and certainly Michigan, which is known as the Great Lakes state, is always about the Great Lakes. And so I raise that because there are two pieces of there's two parts in this bill which I supported and was delighted that it's in here. One, it actually designates the Great Lakes as a USA ecological resource, meaning that any pipelines in close proximity have to undergo additional integrity management procedures beyond the standard pipeline safety measures. Very good thing. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, it also includes a provision requiring that emergency spill response plans include procedures for waterways and shorelines that contain ice coverage, which up in our neck of the woods, believe it or not, we get a lot of ice, and something could happen during the winter months. So I am very appreciative of Chairman Denham and Chairman Schuster on our side, and certainly on the Democratic side, of working with us to get these two pieces of two parts of this bill included on here in the Great Lakes. And I think that we need to do more, but this is a fantastic start, and I think it is a very appropriate one as well. And I thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentlelady. Any other members wish to be heard? Mr. Napolitano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member DeFazio and Chairman Denham and Ranking Member Capuano for the bipartisan work on this PIPES Act. I particularly want to thank committee leadership for working with my colleague, Congressman Sherman, and with the State of California in Section 12 regarding underground natural gas storage facilities. Although I do share the concerns of my colleague Berman that this bill does not go far enough to protect residents, such as those in California who experienced a major natural gas leak earlier this year in Aliso Canyon. Over 100,000 metric tons of gas leaked into the atmosphere, which was the largest natural gas leak in U.S. history. Thousands of residents were evacuated for months, and the investigation into what went wrong. Section 12 of this bill requires the Secretary of Transportation to issue minimum safety standards for underground natural gas storage facilities. I'm grateful that Section 12 also includes a provision very important to me and to the State of California that allows states to go above and beyond federal regulations for regulating underground natural gas storage facilities. Section 12 also imposes a fee on operators of underground natural gas storage facilities to support the federal underground natural gas storage safety program. I do share the concerns with Rep. Sherman that the 2-year implementation period for creating natural gas storage standards is too long, and that the inclusion of consideration for costing consensus in these standards can be used as veiled way to protect the industry at the expense of public safety. Additionally, I appreciate that the bill gives Secretary of Transportation emergency order authority to address imminent hazards, but I remain concerned that this provision does not require PHMSA to act immediately to protect the residents of Porter Ranch and San Fernando Valley. Mr. Chairman, as Ranking Member of Water Resources Committee, I want to thank you for including Section 19 that requires pipeline operators to regularly inspect, make repairs, and prepare for pipeline spills in the areas where the pipelines cross navigable waters. We must protect our lakes, our rivers, our streams, as they provide for our residential and industrial water supply, as well as maintain our environment. Thank you very much again, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Other members wish to be heard? Seeing none, we will now consider the bill for amendment. And with that, I recognize Chairman Denham for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This manager's amendment improves the